trail off. This is my first class.
And we're
That I
here
taught.
for it. I feel very.
Yes, so you guys are my
Yeah,
guinea
don't be scared. We learn.
Personally, I know nothing about this, so no matter what you say, I will
It's
be
right
impressed.
there.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Perfect, then this is exactly where I'm at in my thing, so I mean, starting to go through this, so I need to know the process.
yeah, of course. So this is contract to close and everything that is involved in the very long process. So. Next one. So here are all the parties or the people that are involved in the contract. We have, the listing agent, the seller, selling agent, or buyer's agent. They go by either. Buyer, and then lender for the buyer. Inspector, and there can be all different types of inspectors. You have the general, like basic home inspector. If there's a septic tank, you'll want to get a specific septic company. There's WDO inspectors, which WDO, if you don't know, is wood destroying organisms. There's specific pool inspectors, like basically just do some research and have like your go-to list for those type of people. Yes.
Do you have a list of suggestions?
Um,
for us on that?
I have a couple in mind, but I'm still working on building my own list as well.
Okay.
Because as you know, I'm new to the area as well. So getting to know people, building relationships and stuff like that. But we do have, as you probably know, our in-office Joe, the home inspector.
Yeah.
So he's
Yeah,
a good one to use.
I have that list from up front, those people that we already have. But, don't know if it's appropriate to say, but if you are going to meet with a new termite inspector or whatever, that kind of thing would be, to me, kind of nice if they did it sort of here as a group meet and greet.
Yeah,
so that we
that's a
can
good
kind of
idea.
get familiar with those.
Yeah.
Suggestions.
Yep. Good suggestion. Moving on from inspectors, we have the title company. And just so you know, there's title company, and then there's an escrow company. A lot of times people use the same, like they use the title company for both. So an escrow company is a title company, but they just hold the EMD or deposit. So sometimes, say the seller's paying title, so they choose the one they want to use, but the buyer may not feel super comfortable with their money being put there because they don't have a relationship, they don't know them. So sometimes they're like, hey, I'm fine with that being the title company, but I want to keep my money at this place that I'm more familiar with. So sometimes that happens and you just have to coordinate with the escrow company and the title company, make sure they both know who they are, and that whenever you are closing that the EMD gets transferred from escrow to title, because it's not reimbursed, but it's applied to what the buyer owes at closing. And then we have surveyor. So you need a survey. So that's just, once again, getting some companies and vendors that appraiser, and then contracts or vendors for any repairs. So communication with all the parties involved in the contract. So there's a lot of communication involved in contract to close. If you are the selling agent, you're going to give the copy of the executed contract and all of the deadlines and dates needed. And then for seller, if you're listing agent, make sure you get the executed contracts, them and all their deadlines. Listing agent, you're just gonna make sure they have the offer, all the deadlines to review, and then any negotiations, that's who you're communicating with. Selling agent, once again, execute contracts, reviewing the deadline dates and negotiating. Title company, As soon as you got their contract, make sure they have a copy of it. And in like when you're first getting connected, you make sure the title company has your information. You give them, if you're the selling agent, you make sure they have your buyer's information so they can get a hold of them. You make sure like a title company will need to know if there's an HOA because they're going to need to request the stop letter. So just make sure you provide them all the information. It's easier to do it up front. And then just closing statement preparation and title search, lien waivers, and then any invoices that are going to be paid out at closing. And then lender executed contract. Make sure the buyer gives them all their information, underwriting, lien waivers, home warranty invoice. So this is just like a really quick, I'm gonna go more in depth of the different steps, but this is just basic like communication that happens between you and different people. Keep going the wrong way, I'm sorry. So then more communication from agent to agent. It doesn't really matter like which side you are, but you want to make sure there's important dates and deadlines, and just verify it with the other person. Just be like, hey, if we went under contract at 5:30 on what's today, December 11th, that is like day 0 of the contract. That's the executed date. So like you just want to make sure you're on the same page, because that's important when it comes to like, you know, the deposit being due. If they thought, oh, I thought because it was after 5 that the 12th was the contract date, so they were gonna get it in tomorrow, be like, no, ours was the 11th, so they need to get that in today. So it's just make sure you're on the same page with dates and deadlines. And then listing and selling agents, throughout the entire contract, you're going to be going back and forth on all sorts of things like negotiating inspections, financing, appraisal. Like there's just constant communication. So you want to make sure that you're professional and like just being very polite, because there's so much that goes on that you're going to be communicating with the other side. And then contractors, getting those scheduled, and then final dates for walkthrough and coordinating closing. And then client communication, make sure you just review the contract with them, identify the key dates and deadline, and then send everything over to the client. And then what your expectations of them for the next steps, and then just throughout the whole process, just continually communicating with them. Like you want to make sure you reach out to them before they're coming to you. So like they're gonna have questions, and if you beat them to the point, it's gonna save you time later. So just overview of any technology that's used in a transaction, whether you use DocuSign, which is the main form that Keller Williams uses. I kind of prefer .loop, but DocuSign and .loop, those are just what you use to send out for signatures. Command, obviously, I will show you a little bit more on that for submitting opportunities for DA. Obviously, Gmail. Google Calendar is really important because you want to make sure with all the important dates that you save those in your calendar, and with reminders a couple days in advance if needed. And then Google Drive, that's where I'm going to show you checklists. I keep mine in Google Drive. So here's the contract to close checklist. There's so many resources out there. People use different kinds. You want to figure out what works best for you. Like I said, so I don't know if you can read these as well, but it just has all the information up top that you might need, like the seller and buyer, which side you are, the address, who's the escrow company or title company, the agent on the other side. It's nice to just have everything in one spot. If you like brain fart, you can't remember, oh, who's the agent on this contract again? I have so many, I'm so confused. You could just go to this one spot and all the information is there. And then this is just like really simple blank where you can put action items on the line, like when it's due and then when it's completed. This is from .loop. They have it for free that you can download. Same with this is free online that you can get. And it just has like the contract, make sure that's signed, executed agreement between buyer and agent or brokerage, disclosures, proof of funds, and it goes through all the steps and just check off each box. So checklists are so important because it helps hold you accountable and make sure you do not forget anything, because there's so many nuances to the process. Here's just a couple but more. Critical date checklist, that's there again. Let me move this so you guys can see. This is one that I've used a lot. Oh, why'd you do that? So you have the address written, is the EMD in place? Have inspections been completed? Has the WDO been completed? Did you get your DA's title? Survey, I like to do a check at the top when it's ordered and whenever it's back, because you don't want to check off survey when it's been ordered and you get to closing and be like, hey, did it ever come back? You want to make sure it's back. Appraisal, like the title commitments, title lien search, estoppel. Like I said, estoppels are required for HOAs or condominiums. This is basically a letter that states everything that is due to the company and everything that the seller has paid or owed. Loan commitment, re-inspections, walkthrough, closing appointment, and then just coordinating sign, lockboxing keys, closing the file, making sure you received your check, and then I like to add on gifts and database to make sure everyone has received the same thing. So within the first 24 to 48 hours, here's some things that you want to make sure you're doing. If you're on the selling side, you want to make sure you get the executed contract and any addenda to the lender and make sure the buyer has them. Make sure everyone's set with the closing date and when your financing contingency ends, and when, if you have an appraisal contingency, that's an important date to have. If you're the listing agent, you want to make sure you get the executed contract and addenda to both the seller and title. And I just like to, like, even if whatever side you're on, you should be communicating with the title company. And then just let them know, like I said, all of the important contact information and make sure everyone knows the dates. And then communicating with the coordinating title company and the buyer with money instructions for deposit, whether that's dropping it off or wiring it. And then I always like to do like a disclosure to the buyer, like, hey, I will never request money from you. Like, and always call if you get any sort of request for money, because there is so many things like about wire fraud. Like we've had a seller once where they got email from like the agent I worked with, Wendy, requesting $10,000, and he thought it was the title company. And then we were like, you're the seller, why are you shouldn't be sending any money right now. And ended up being email was hacked into, got our customers' information and requested money from them. So it just makes sure they know to call and verify before they send any money. And then send your list of inspectors to the buyer. So I send out a congrats email, which I think it'll show in another slide. So I send them all the steps up front, just so like it's a little bit overwhelming, but they know each and everything they need to do, and you circle back and say, hey, this was done, or hey, you make sure you need to do this. And I tell them whenever it comes to inspectors, you can give them 2 to 3 options, but always let them know that they can do their own research, and it is entirely up to them who they use, just because you never want to be like, if there's some sort of situation where the inspector misses something, you don't want it to fall on you. And then, of course, important dates and deadlines. Make sure your buyer or seller knows, and the other agent, and make sure it's in your calendar. And then just making sure the deposit is due and it is in place. That's typically 3 days after a contract date. So here, this is in the way. So I like I said, I have my congrats email, which is what I call it. It's always already drafted, and I just copy, paste, and fill out the information. It saves a lot of time. So this one's was one that was online. It says, dear buyer, congratulations on your accepted offer at property address. Enclosed, you will find a complete list of the dates and deadlines per the offer to purchase, as well as a copy of the offer. Please note the dates when contingencies need to be met or items that need to be completed. And then you go through each one. You want to verify the effective date or when the offer was accepted, because like I said, that's day 0 and you count from there. So if today's the 11th, we go under contract, that's day 0. And then the EMD is due in 3 days. When their financing contingency is needed, and make sure they stay in touch with their lender to get this, and make sure their lender has everything they need. When inspection period ends, and that's when you let them know, here's some inspectors that I recommend. Do your own research and let me know who you can choose so I can facilitate getting this set up, and make sure if you're on the selling side that the listing agent, even if it's a vacant property, that they always know when someone is going to the property. Appraisal and contingency, when that is due, loan commitment, when closing is, final walkthrough, it can be up to 3 days before closing. I typically do 1 to 2 days before. Home warranty, and then just yeah, so just I can, if you want more examples of the initial email to buyers, I can give you some more examples, but this was just a very simple one that I found. And then it's just making sure your buyer knows all their deadlines, and making sure the listing agent knows as well. So within 7 days of going under contract, you want to make sure that everything is in command and that the opportunity is submitted. So make sure you submit the commissions tab in command. Because sometimes people, they just upload the documents, they forget to do that tab, and it's not approved because you need to have this commissions tab completed. And then some of the documents needed are the pending report, if there's a counter offer, the actual agreement, the addendum. If it's a condo, you need the condo rider and disclosure, lead-based paint addendum if it's built before 1978, the buyer agreement, which is between the buyer and the brokerage, and the EMD. So I'm gonna exit out of this real quick.
Put that back up for this one.
Okay, yes, sorry. And let me know if I'm just going too fast.
No, you're not.
Sorry.
I think that.
So command, like I said, so this is the home page. does everyone need to, like, have you seen this before?
I have.
Okay, so you create an opportunity. And that's these shaking hands right here. And then I don't have anything because I'm not an agent, but you create opportunity, say I'm on the buying side. Just gonna search one of my contacts. Say my friend Alicia here is the buyer. She has her husband. Let's put in Ben. Let's say it is, I do the property address at 123 Main Street. Custom tag 123 Main Street. Create it. Let's say we're supposed to close in the middle of January. You put in what your commission rate is, say 2%. And we are active in negotiations. So you submit. And it creates the opportunity. So if you go back here and under buyer, we'll see I have active and there's 123 Main Street. So here's the different, so here's the key details. So if you click on this pencil right here, we put in the projected close date, but you also need the contract date, which is the effective date. So say we went under contract today and hit save. Documents, you have to click what type it is, and it's residential. During your consultation, you can already go ahead and upload the disclosures, like the brokerage agreement. But under contract, this is where you would upload the contract. Residential improved property, you can either download it and just drop it in, or if you have, I don't have a room set up right now because this is just an example, but you can click here and it will say upload from DocuSign or whatever, and make sure it's under start a transaction. You'd start the transaction and switch it to DocuSign, and you can directly upload from DocuSign. But this is where the MLS pending report is. The EMDs here, if it's a condo, but this is where you upload everything. But before you can submit it, you have to do offers and commissions. So you select add a new offer. Make sure the dates are right, which I had said middle of January, and you would select a property from here. If it's an active property, you could search in the address 123 Main Street, whatever, it show it, and you select it and save it. If it's not on the MLS, say it's a pocket listing that you have under contract, you just type in the address here. And then I have the buyers in here, so I put the seller name, say it was who is the other agent, put in Mike. And then is it cash or is it financing? So say it's $350,000 house that they're financing, and this is kind of for just, I don't really use this, but you can, if you have multiple offers on a listing, you can put each one in and just compare them and write what you like and don't like about it. And then once you have that, you have to hit accept. And then manage commission. And then if you need to edit the general information, just make sure the contract date's correct, close date, and that your commissions are correct. And then if you have, say, a referral, you'd click on edit agent payment. And you would extra payment options. And that can be, like I said, a referral. If there's a bonus, because sometimes if it'll say on the MLS and the agent information, or there be a section that says, hey, if you bring a full price offer, you'll get $10,000. Like, so you have to record that on your DA. Or if there's a concession, like, hey, I negotiated with the seller, they didn't get the price that they want, so I'm deducting $1,000 from my commission. But we're just for this example, we're gonna do an outside referral. You put in the percentage, generally 25%, and then you have to put the agent's name and their information, their company name, and then you'll need to get their company W-9, which has their EIN, and that's where you put the number in. Just fill out the rest of the information that's on the W-9, and then you hit click save. I'm just gonna exit out of this for now. And then it'll show like where you are as far as capping. It'll show a percentage and what you owe, like in the balance. Like, I'm not a licensed agent, so I'm not a good example of what it was, but it would show like the amount that you owe. But just verify the math, pull up a calculator, what's 2% of 350, and just verify that the numbers are right, and you'd hit submit. If you want to donate to KW Cares, you can do that directly through here. Just submit it, and then you go back to documents after that offers and commissions tab is submitted, and you go off, and then you have all the documents in here. That's whenever you be able to submit to MC Market Center, and then once they approve it, this is where your DA will be, and you will make sure to send the copy of your DA and how you want to receive the money to the title company. Some people do it by pickup. Sometimes people ask the title company to mail them a check. And then on the DA, if you owe company dollars to Keller Williams, it'll have their address on the DA of where the title company needs to send the money. And then when you're closed, you just go to close, upload the statement, and then submit it. Back to our slides. So yes, so that was submitting opportunities. And then throughout the transaction, which is 7 to 25 days, generally you close in about 30 days. Sometimes it can be more because, you know, you have different, say, if the buyer had to sell their home, that's a whole extra step that's added to the process. For that, you would just contact the listing agent for their home if it's another state or another city. If they have an agent, you'd make sure you get connected with them, you coordinate the closings, make sure the title companies know each other so they can transfer the money there and hold it for closing. Just a lot of communication back and forth if there's a contingency like that. But you want to make sure you get inspections, get those reports and any test results. You're going to be, if there's repairs, you're going to have to work with the listing agent if you're on the selling side to negotiate repairs and then get an executed repair addendum. and then verifying with the lender that the appraisal has been ordered, and then you may want to make sure it gets back before their loan contingency ends, because for loan approval, the lender, has to make sure that the appraisal is good. Does everyone know what like a tidewater is? Okay, so sometimes whenever an appraiser goes out and it doesn't come in at the contract price, that's whenever you go into what's considered a tidewater. And that's where you have to start negotiating with the listing agent to bring the price down, or sometimes they'll ask, hey, I want cash above this, and it's just a very long process where you have to negotiate and figure out what the pricing is. Sometimes they'll say these repairs are required, and then they'll go back out and inspect the property again for the appraisal. There's just different things that happen for that. And then verifying with the lender that loan commitment deadline is met. I generally check in with the lender a minimum of 3 days before, because if there's some sort of issue, like, hey, they borrowed money for their car and we have to make sure that's like paid off or whatever to have them approved for this. You just want to make sure if there's any issues that you go ahead and preemptively get an extension out, and you can have the negotiate with the listing agent to extend that period. And then making sure the listing agent knows once they're approved. I did a side note to make sure, unless it's required, don't send out an inspection report to a lender, because that's happened before. Because with different types of financing, say for VA, it is required that they have a clear WDO, that there's no wood rot. If it's a loan that doesn't require it and you accidentally send it to them and there is wood rot, sometimes that can mess up their financing. So you don't want to mess up like that, because it happens sometimes, but you got to live and learn sometimes. But unless it's required and they specifically ask for it and you have approval from the buyer to send it and share it with them, don't do that. Okay, so within 7 to 10 days prior to closing, if there's any work done, like repairs or anything, you want to make sure you have the paid invoice and the closed permit. So just make sure that the permit is closed, because say the roof was getting done, that was a repair that was negotiated. You don't want to have them close, and then it's once a buyer purchases a property, any open or expired permits are their responsibility. So you want to make sure that the seller and the listing agent work to get the permit closed. And then just make sure both the lender and buyer are aware that everything's good or not good. And then 1 week prior to closing, I tend to do I try to get command work done more than a week before closing, because there's times like if appraisal comes in low and you have to renegotiate the purchase price, it's easier to go in and just change it or send an email to the market center and just be like, hey, I need to update the DA. You just want to make sure it's in place, because DA is how you get paid. So you want to make sure it's in place before you close. So just make sure that's to the title company. Work with all parties to schedule a time and place for closing. So sometimes you have a title company that's like an hour away, something like that. The seller just live someplace else and they wanted a title company closer to them. If that's the case, you can always close here at the office and just make sure you reserve conference room for that. There's just situations where, like, say the buyer wasn't able to come in town to close because they're out of state, you can set up a notary to go meet them, say at a public place or a Starbucks, to sit down and sign their papers. There's different situations like that where they're not always going to be in town for closing. I'm scheduling the final walkthrough. Like I said, I do that 1 day in advance, but you can do that up to 3 days in advance before closing. Verifying the closing disclosure is sent out. It has to be sent out 3 business days in advance in order to close on time. So there's some situations where if something happens, the lender doesn't get out, and suddenly you need an extension to the close date. So just stay in communication, make sure you are on top of that so no one gets freaked out and worried.
Is there a closing disclosure cash?
That's for if they're getting financing. Mm-hmm. And then make sure that the lender and the buyer has their instructions of what they were doing with their closing funds. Like I said, just make sure they know I will never ask you for money. Call and verify before you send anything. And then even if, like, some people don't know this, I guess I didn't really know this, but it's something you got to know. If you're paying cash, it's not actually hard cash money. So like the buyer just needs to make sure they go get like a cashier's check or wire it. It's something funny. Oh, I didn't know that. I thought cash was cash.
Yeah. Should be.
I know. And then final walkthrough confirming that repairs are done. And then if it's, say, a condo where it's coming furnished, you want to make sure you do that list where you walk through and you have a signed agreement of everything that is supposed to stay, so that if you go to the walkthrough and you're like, hey, on this agreement we said the couch was staying or the TV staying, where's that at? Because if you don't have a signed agreement with each item listed out, then it doesn't protect the buyer. But if you have that signed, then the seller is responsible for returning or replacing that item. Okay. So closing day and after closing. So you just want to make sure that you have the executed settlement statement. Make sure you got your commission check. If you have a referral agent, just track their check and confirm with them that they received it. MLS report. Make sure if you're the listing agent that you close that in a timely manner and that you upload it and close your command opportunity for final approval. If you didn't bring a gift or a card to closing, you can always mail. Like at Bold, we had Cutco come and they have, and I wanted to say embossed, but it's like they have your etched. Okay, I knew embossed was not the right word, but yeah, they have sketched your name and your company onto like a kitchen knife. So those are a cool closing gift. People do different things. You just find out what your thing is. And then request reviews. That's something that is really important. If you have done some of the listing presentation or listing classes with Jordis or Erica, they say, like, as soon as you are working with them, go ahead and be upfront about reviews and be like, from the beginning, here is what I expect of you. What do you expect of me? Here's how I'm going to meet those and hopefully exceed your expectations. And with that agreement, I'd love for you to review me because online reviews do matter, and just try to request that up front rather than just at the end. And then updating your database is important. Like if you have all your contacts in command, you just want to make sure like that you have a spreadsheet or whatever way you track your closing and know your numbers. Because you want to know your, not just your commission that you've made, but just track what you closed for properties. So this is a little overview chart. I went to broker Jeff's class the other day. He had a chart like this that I liked. It's just a very broad overview of everything that happens in the transaction, on both the buyer and the seller side in each of the steps. So moving on to the sales pitch. What does a transaction coordinator do? A transaction coordinator performs the administrative and organizational tasks involved in getting a real estate transaction from contract to close. They track deadlines, handle paperwork, and ensure your company files are compliant. As a transaction coordinator, they focus on coordinating with all parties involved in the transaction and strive to keep the process streamlined, organized, and on schedule to meet the deadlines and close dates. Why should you use a transaction coordinator? When it comes to real estate transaction, there's so much more than just signing the contract and handing over the keys. Transactions involve many tasks throughout the process that require coordination, expertise, and dedication. Whether you are a new agent with no experience or a longtime agent juggling multiple buyers and sellers, utilizing the service of a transaction coordinator is essential to the success of your business. Having the aid of a transaction coordinator ensures everything runs smoother and allows you to leverage your time by taking care of the busy work so you can focus on income-producing activities and better market yourself as a real estate agent. Why you should use me? I'm the in-office transaction coordinator for Keller Williams Naples and Marco Island. I have 3 years of experience in the real estate industry as an assistant to an agent of Keller Williams Realty Emerald Coast. As a real estate assistant, I helped close over $53 million in sales from 2021 to 2023. My interest is real estate, but my passion is helping people navigate seamlessly through the transaction process. I pride myself in having a strong work ethic, empathetic nature, and a positive attitude. My goal is to help agents close deals and help clients feel comfortable and at ease with the process of buying or selling by providing clear communication and updates throughout the transaction. So here's just a quick list of everything that I do as a transaction coordinator and the fee. So I would track all the dates, make sure all the paperwork's in place, get signatures if any additional addendum are required, make sure you get commands submitted and your DA to a title, just monitoring deadlines, make sure everything's missed and everything runs smoothly. I also offer listing management, which is $150 per listing. I just help schedule photos and staging, make sure anything, if there's a property like inspection or appraisal before we go active, making sure that's scheduled. I write property description, email back and forth, updating the seller and communicating with them, get disclosures and any information needed from the seller, and then inputting into the MLS. And then if there's any price changes or price reductions, I record that. I do a just listed or open house, social media marketing, and creative property flyer. And then these are other services that I offer. I do contract preparation, so listing agreements and contracts. Like there was an agent over Thanksgiving break. They forgot their laptop. Their husband didn't have a laptop, so they call me up. Hey, can you really quickly write this offer? I say my hours are 8:30 to 5:30, but text me, call me if I'm available. I'll help you out. And then setting up your personal website, creating the Facebook business page, single Facebook posts, and flyers. Any questions?
It's very thorough.
So I know that the, like, transaction coordination, we would pay you after it closes. The
Mhm.
listing, is that no matter what happens with it? You know what I mean?
Yes, so for listing, it is kind of, it's more upfront.
Right.
As soon
Like
as,
MLS and like.
yeah. So whenever we go active, then yes, I believe that's like where I get paid. And as far as the other services, listing management is kind of along the same lines of, you pay whenever the services are received.
Right.
But with the transaction coordination, I'm as invested as you are in the transaction getting to closing.
Right.
And if something happens, then I don't get paid either, because I want it to close.
Okay.
I think I'm going to end the recording. Thanks for watching.